Systems are not sexy, let's be honest, but results are. And for business success, for you to have a profitable enterprise that can work without you, you need systems. Systems are critical. Business coach Juliet Kyes shares with us today some great strategies to put around systems, including time management, but also around culture and recruitment. Let's have a listen to Juliet. Juliet, so great to be with you today. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited.
Juliet, tell me what led you to becoming a business coach?
Well, that's a funny story because, growing up, I never thought I would be a business coach or listen to an Australian guy for hundreds of hours. But I always knew I loved business. Like once I really understood business and I loved people, like that was a trend all from having like my own babysitting business. Like I knew I like had this entrepreneurial spirit and loved people. So when my parents actually found the franchise and I was graduating with a business degree, that's what was my initial introduction to business coaching. And I still remember dragging my feet to like help them kind of solidify their business plan for what they were starting. And then within 2 hours, I was begging them to be a part of it. So, that's almost 17 years ago now, but the rest is kind of history. But I just didn't even know what it was. Even with a business degree, I had never heard of it before. So I'm glad they introduced me to it.
I love that Aussie guy with, hundreds of videos. And Juliet, what do you love the most about business coaching and working with clients and their businesses?
I think my favorite part is once we get past the initial challenges of everything and even those who we don't enter into coaching with, being able to reassure them that they're not alone. Their challenges are not unique because they feel very alone in the challenges they're having. So even the ones that aren't ready right now or just, aren't ready for whatever reason, are not coachable, like at least letting them know they're not alone. And then the ones that actually go into coaching, be able to see that transformation where I almost have to remind them, like, remember when your team was like horrible and they weren't doing anything and you tried to do everything yourself or you didn't know your financials, and they just kind of like laugh and reflect on the fact that, wow, I really have come so far because they almost don't remember what's happened throughout the coaching process. So I love that. I love the shift and the true change in the human being that I always say, like, you can't unsee this stuff. Once you see it, your mind has been shifted. And so just seeing every level of that unfold is so rewarding.
Yeah, that's amazing. So when you say, business owners come to you, with that initial challenge, what is that often, that initial challenge that you find most people have?
Yeah, I would say it all boils down to time, team, or money. And I almost say like time is the crux of all of it because the reason why they don't understand their money or don't have good financial systems in place is because they say they don't have time. And the reason they don't recruit as, consistently as they need to is because they say they don't have time. The reason their team isn't great is because they're not taking the time to train them and onboard them properly. So I think if out of those three, it's always time, team, or money, but I think time is the most challenging. And ironically, it's their excuse for not doing coaching too. Like when I have time or when I get this done, then I'll start. When really the first thing we do with coaching is address time and help them even find the time for the things that are working on the business, because it's almost impossible to get an insight for yourself on what you should stop doing or what's really not a good use of your time until someone from the outside asks you good questions and helps you expose those things.
So walk me through that. Like, what is the first thing that you would look at when it comes to that challenge around time?
I think, we just get into habits. Like I'm guilty of it. That's why I have coaching too. Like I just get in my comfort zone and I want to keep doing the same thing that I'm comfortable with. And the same thing is true for them. So re-looking at, when's the last time you really evaluated, should you be doing administrative pay wage kind of activities? I mean, even like ordering supplies, those are things that in this day and age could be automated. I mean, Amazon has like reordering, a lot of the systems have that. So even just reflecting for them, because a lot of times they haven't been thinking that through or reflecting on it. Like, do we really need to be traveling all over the place? Travel is a big one. Technology just absorbs our attention and causes distraction. So do we need to be checking email this many times a day? Do we need to be taking every phone call urgently? I actually learned one from a client recently. He said, I added a text autoresponder that says, I'm in a meeting, is this urgent? And I just love the way that was phrased. It's those little tiny shifts of just empowering them to realize, is this urgent? And he was like, it's amazing to see this text string. Like, they go from asking a question to go, I think I got it, to it all worked out. He never even called it back. So it's amazing how when you start realizing not everything's urgent, if you make it urgent, then everything becomes urgent. But just reflecting, how can you shift that? You know, the great question I ask them to ask themselves is, do I need to be doing this? Could I delegate this to someone else? And is this really urgent? When you start asking better quality questions like that for yourself, you get better answers and you start moving things forward.
Yeah, it's really empowering. And it's just, it's when you actually stop and you do measure what you're spending your time on. It's like, it's just a trap, isn't it? It's just this trap that we fall into of like, I have to respond to that message straight away, or that email's come in and I have to respond to it. It's just this trap that we fall into. And you're just spinning your wheels so much, and the end of the day comes around. It's like, did I spend my time on the right things, kind of towards my goals and where I'm kind of heading? So yeah, I love that. So what's one thing that a piece of advice that you could give to business owners that are listening to this that could help them around, if they're finding that challenge around time? Not having enough time
Well, I think
to
you
do the
said
things
it.
that they want.
I think you said it. Like, the theme, I feel like, to get any results is the more, whatever you measure improves. So, you know, when you measure your time, all of a sudden you're much more vigilant to where it's being wasted. And even vigilant to things that maybe it's not a waste, but someone else could be doing it at a lower wage, and you've really just gotten in the habit of that. Or maybe you just like it. You know, many of us watch TV or surf the internet or social media because we're just kind of checking out. But do we put parameters on that? Are we aware of how much checkout time is happening? And so I think it's down to measuring it is really what starts to light the possibility of what you could shift. And as a coach, you always want the person to identify what they could shift. You know, I could tell you till I'm blue in the face that you need to stop being on social media so much. But when you actually measure and see where your time is going and you're not able to be with your kids or your spouse because of that, it starts to really make you realize that, versus me telling you that that's an issue for everyone. It becomes relevant for you and your world.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I do this. There's the frog sheet that we use in ActionCOACH, which is a Brian Tracy strategy, and I love that. It's just such a great way to kind of bring me back to the things that I need to be focusing on, that are helping me towards my goals. So what are those 6 things that I need to do today that are going to help me, action items towards achieving my goals? And the frog is the big thing that I need to do that often we put off to the last minute, and I just try and get that done first. So
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. So I think that there's just so many kind of tips when it comes to time. So your suggestion is measure what you're spending your time on is number 1. What would number 2 be?
Number 2, I think you're hitting on it, is just, you know, really realizing that you're in control of how you set the tone. And we talk about the reticular activating system, and realizing that happens in your day too. So just like when you go to a grocery store and you don't have a list and you're hungry, especially, you come out with all of this hodgepodge things that got your attention, versus like you go into your day intentionally. You can also go into a meeting intentionally, having an agenda, going into a learning environment intentionally. So just being more intentional with, what do I want to get out of this? What am I going into this to accomplish? Because you really can set your reticular activating system as many times as you want, but most really aren't taking advantage of that level of focus and strategic intentionality. And I think what you just shared is one to really start you off on your day correctly, but you can do it throughout your day for all of these interactions that you're having. And I think that's kind of the practice of setting your calendar up in a defaulted way where you're choosing where time things go and which days you're out of the office and traveling, which days you're not, how many new clients can you take on, how many is too much, like really being more in charge of how that flow goes and what those meetings are about is just going to help you maximize more of what you're getting out of it.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you. Okay, so let's talk about a client that, I mean, you work with, the hundreds and hundreds of clients. And so tell me about a client that's come to you with a challenge and how did you help them overcome that?
So a client story that comes to mind is actually one that came in kind of a fix it moment, because before finding us, he had engaged with a consultant that, promised to systematize his whole business for sale for only $100,000 upfront, got him connected with a very high interest loan to pay for that. It was over 5 weeks. I mean, they were there for hours and hours over the 5 weeks. But by the time I met with him, he literally was like, Juliet, I don't even know what they just did, or I have all these pieces of content and job descriptions and Excel documents, but I don't really know what to do with them. And so to start at that place where this had been a 20-year-old business, one that had been multi-million-dollar businesses that had like slipped over the years as he was less engaged, to coming on and in their first year, really having a better understanding of where he was losing money and being able to readjust that. He was having to go on job sites because they didn't have a good recruitment process. So being able to really get the right team on board. He's in a trades business that had a lot of like drugs, alcohol, crime kind of records of the employees. So like overcoming all of those things, and getting him refocused on sales, pricing things appropriately. He was able to actually double his business in a year. So he went from 1 million something to 2 million something. He's already at $500,000 in his first quarter this year. So he's on track for hitting 2.5 to 3 this year. So, but that wouldn't have been possible if there wasn't someone there really walking him through how to implement these things. And I think that's where, I feel really good about what we offer, is that not only are we breaking a lump sum, which we charge way less than $100,000 in a year, but we're breaking it down into monthly or even weekly payments. And we're there really holding their hand, helping them through the challenges. When the ad didn't work right away, adjusting it. And so now he's winning and using that statewide to get employees. It's just all these little things that we're able to help and impact really starts to compound into doubling, like adding another $1 million a year was a major thing. He was able to pay down debt. He was able to put money away. And, he's got almost $500,000 in his bank account where he didn't have that before. So the sky's the limit for him. He started to hire a salesperson, so he's not even in sales anymore, which is a new exciting thing for him. So, to go from that situation where he was way behind and feeling like he invested in it wasn't a good investment, to being able to get him to a cash flow positive place and adding savings and growing, but also just his mindset about what's possible now and feeling really reassured is so rewarding to be able to do that. And we've done that so many times, but I love that story because most people don't realize how we're different from other options and out there for helping you get there.
Yeah. So you mentioned systems. I want to just dive into that. So tell me, what kind of systems did you help him put in place?
I think the big one that he would say was that recruitment process, because why that was so big is it got him out of having to go to jobs. And even now, as he's like, wow, we've just got all these jobs coming. Like, my only fear now is we don't have the people to supply it. I'm like, well, you do, because you have a recruitment system. And he's like, that's true. We just need to turn that on and crank ads to it, just like we would crank marketing to get clients. So, and that immediately started producing top candidates. So, it's that kind of a system where you can turn it on and off as you're growing. I think the other thing that's caused all these clients to come is having consistent marketing. So he didn't really have a marketing machine that was consistent. So really getting that turned on. And we also got his financial kind of back of the house system systematized. And we're still working on it. We're still tweaking it where things are billed earlier. He was able to renegotiate with his vendors to save like $3 per unit for him, which adds up to a lot of money for a volume like that. But all these like little things that are adjustments just took starting with what's the base system? Where are we now? And how do we expand on that? He actually took our 12-week sales training and really got from that how to develop his sales training process and his sales process. So that's been a great system to pass on to the salesperson he just hired. So he just keeps like stacking them, which starts to impact the fact that he doesn't have to do it. It's written down, it's communicated, it's a process that's repeatable that doesn't need him.
So tell me about the recruitment system.
Yeah, it's
You
one of my
mentioned that.
favorites. And I think the big thing about that is everyone has the same frustrations with recruiting, which is I can't find good help. But they all do the same things. They hire very quickly out of desperation. They waited to the last minute until like everyone's full and at capacity. And then they start recruiting, which really just they're starting hiring. They're not starting recruiting. So what really works is doing it proactively, just like most of the things we do in coaching, and actually thinking ahead, like who is the next ideal hire, getting that working, starting to post ads so that you can have these conversations because the best employees are hired somewhere else. Like they're not unemployed. So they're going to at least need 2 weeks. Sometimes they need more conversations to even feel comfortable moving from a good position. And so just starting earlier in that process, because recruitment doesn't mean you're hiring. It's the marketing it takes to build the candidate pipeline. And I think the system that we have that we get to share as action coaches is phenomenal in the fact that most business owners don't have a lot of time for recruitment. They picture themselves like literally printing resumes and flipping through each one. And, that's been their experience. So to have a process that really has the candidate deselect themselves, which cuts down 50% or more of reading resumes, where my clients don't even have to look at all those resumes anymore. They're only looking at the people that actually did this step of deselection, meaning they answered some additional questions, or they submitted a video, or they answered some questions on a phone call. Like they actually did an extra step that didn't involve the business owner or the person hiring doing anything. And then they're disqualifying again by doing a group interview. So these are all ways of saving a lot of time and just getting down to quality instead of quantity, and really taking your time with that versus doing it as a rush in urgency really makes a difference.
Okay, I love that. So let me just recap on that because I think you've made some great points. So point one, if you're thinking about hiring or need to hire a team, is plan ahead. So be really clear and intentional about planning ahead, not waiting until you're desperate. And I hear this a lot from business owners where they kind of I'll hire someone when I've got more work or more sales, or and often it's then this desperation to find somebody, and then you quickly get them in the job, and then they're scrambling and you've got no time for training. And so I love that. So be really clear, plan for the recruitment, and you don't have to hire someone straight away, but it's that. So how long in advance do you suggest? Is it like a month?
Yeah, because if you're not proactive, then you're just going to end up with whoever's available, and you're probably not even going to be clear what the position is about.
Yeah. So do you suggest like a month in advance? So if a business owner is, say a month out from kind of needing to hire someone, should they start that plan, advertise for someone? Like what's that time frame do you usually recommend?
Yeah, so you want to have the ad out there for at least 2 weeks. So if you're kind of planning, 2 weeks from posting it, you could start to have those group interviews. If you're further out, like there's times where we're a month out, at least having a phone interview to keep them interested and engaged and kind of vet if this is someone you'd like to invite to the group interview. You can tell them about the process and that is going to be the next step and give them the date. So you could work as much as a month or even a month and a half out. You just need to communicate that to them so they understand where you're at. And some of them are in a more urgent standpoint. So you might lose some people because they need to urgently take a position, but at least they still know of you. So if that doesn't work out, you could always revisit it and stay in touch, just like what happens in marketing, right? You can't always take on every single lead that you get because you're out of capacity or you can't properly service that person at that moment. But it doesn't mean they're never going to come back to you. Now they're in your database. And if you stay in touch, they could potentially become a client of yours in the future. So it's the same kind of idea of like build a funnel for candidates so that they know you and you know of them. And what ends up happening is if somebody is really amazing and impressive, and usually the business owner then wants to move on it. And I can't tell you how many times it helps them, because the main thing they do is they stay stuck in keeping people that are not a good fit. They haven't been productive in a long time. people won't quit. Like, why would they leave money? That doesn't make any sense to them. Like, they're not going to leave a job. They need you to help them move on and find something that they're going to really thrive in and be happy in. But then business owners don't want to recruit because it seems like it takes so much time and I'm going to have to go through all this again. And so when you start talking to candidates that are out there, like, it's amazing how the business owner is like, oh my gosh, like, they would be such a good fit and this would be so much easier. And all of a sudden they start moving a lot faster on building team and replacing people that really haven't worked for a long time. So I'm always encouraging, like, even if you're not ready right now, just start talking to people about that are candidates so that you can understand what's in the marketplace and what's available to you that you might not be aware of because you've just been out of the game. You haven't even been trying to recruit.
And you mentioned the group interview, Juliet. How does that work?
So the beautiful thing of a group interview, which is kind of the thing I have to convince people to do at times, because they're like, that's so weird. That's so like uncomfortable. Why would I put them all in the same room? But it has so many beautiful benefits. And I say, like, how many hours do you spend scheduling these 1 hour interviews with people? Because that's what they'll do. And then some people won't show up. Some people show up and they still spend an hour with them, even though they know, like, the minute they walk in, they are not a good fit because of how they're dressed, or they literally smell like marijuana or alcohol or something. It's like, but now I have to spend an hour with you because that's what we scheduled. And so it's just such a huge waste of time versus a group interview lets you say, this is what the position's about. This is what our company is all about. Asking them some questions, not super personal, but enough surface to understand, like, are their future goals matching with us? Are they articulating what the position is about, where they're really getting it? Is this a good fit for them? And then having them fill out some sort of a questionnaire or a feedback about that experience and if they still want to move on. So it really helps, again, to deselect. So if people don't show up, people cancel at the last minute, it's not like you wasted that scheduled time waiting for them or wondering where they are, because you have other people that did show up. So literally like 50% or more will drop off. I've had people one time I had a client that had like 15 people confirm the day before and only one showed up the next day. And it just so happened that she made it through the whole process and became like her employee for years. But 15 out of 15, only one showed up out of all those confirming. That would have been 15 hours of one-on-one interviews that she was potentially going to invest in for them to just not show or not be that interested, because that just shows their interest level if they're not showing up to that. So it's really this amazing thing. The other thing that comes out of it is when you have team there. I've had so many clients' team say, well, wow, if I had this experience when I was hired, maybe I wouldn't have made it on the team. Like, they kind of get rechecked into, this vision is exciting. I'm so grateful to be on this team. I'm so excited I got the job. Like, it changes their whole mindset when they see there's people in the community that want my job and want to be a part of this thing and what we're doing. Like, I need to be more grateful than I have been. And it just kind of checks them back into that enrolling and inspiring vision that's going on and appreciating their job instead of taking it for granted. So it has this like amazing kind of elements that happen from doing that. But at the end of the day, it saves the business owner so much time by doing it that way.
And I love too, because it would also give you, as the hiring manager or the business owner, a chance to kind of sit back and observe. So if the team are interacting or asking questions of candidates, or while other candidates are talking in the room, it just gives you a time to sit back and reflect and see how they respond, observe how they go in that group dynamic. Yeah, I love that strategy. Thank you for sharing that. And so your client obviously used this process in his recruitment. And how is he going with this team now?
Yeah. They all love it. Once they do it, they're like, okay, I understand now. And the candidates even will say, this has been so helpful. This was a great process. And that was really a lot of them. Their main concern was like, what would the candidates think of it? Because it is so different. But ultimately, the candidates really like it too, because it is that time where you can invite some team. Usually for candidates' experiences, they'll have to do multiple interviews and schedule those out, where you could have all those members in one place. So it's more efficient for the candidate too, to kind of meet the team and see what this experience is going to be like. So everybody who's run that is just loves it. It's just the pulling them along for the first one is the hardest thing. Like, just give it a chance. But once they do, they love it. They absolutely do.
And so back to systems with the client that you were sharing. So he got this recruitment system in place now, which is great. Once they've made the decision to hire someone, is it like, what are the systems for training and kind of getting the new hire on track?
Yeah, so the system for onboarding and training them really comes down to what are those key expectations of their position. So that's something else that comes out of this process is not just having a job description, but really knowing, what is it that we're expecting of them, whether it's, how quickly things should be done or how many jobs per day or what's the time frame on certain things or what's the quality level we're looking for or the customer feedback. So having some clear measurement of what high performance looks for them, and then having a dedicated manager that actually is training and onboarding them to those expectations. So that becomes kind of like the curriculum, if you will, or the syllabus to what the training is. Because typically the training program is follow me around and you'll learn from just observing and following me around for a week or two or whatever it is. So instead, having that clarified list of expectations lets that person really know, like, oh, I forgot to talk about this, or really need to repeat multiple times until we get this at the standard it needs to be. So it does allow for some of that, just the organicness of training, but it also makes sure that the things that are most important in their position are really being trained on. And we're not getting distracted with like, well, could you do this too? And can you do that? Because it's easy to get into that slippery slope of like, this has been sitting over here and needs done. Like really honing it into like, these are the 5 things that when you do these well, you're returning on my investment in you. And then we can add other skills after that. But these are the things that are most important.
Yeah, amazing. Now, one of the things that you do, I've seen you do extremely well in your own coaching business, and I'm sure you would encourage and talk to your clients about this, is culture. So you've got systems in place for recruitment. You've got the systems in place for training and support and key performance indicators for the new hires. But culture is something that often I think sometimes business owners, they know what it is. They say that they've got a great culture, but time again can often be one of those constraints around, I just don't have time to put a plan together around or a system around culture. And now you're the culture queen. I want to hear you talk about culture.
Some of my favorite things is, and kind of bridging off of what we were just talking about with the expectations, they're not just for saying what's wrong, they're for saying what's right. So when you're really clear on expectations, it's much easier to reward and recognize, where if you don't have those in place, it's harder to tell, like, are they winning or losing? I'm not really sure. Like, then it just becomes emotional. Like, I've had a bad day or a customer had a bad day, and that's what I'm basing my feedback on, versus really stepping back and saying, how is this person measuring up to the things I said I needed when I hired them? It's a different perspective. And I think, just building good relationships comes down to that specific rewarding, not just saying great job, but being more specific. Great job at doing X, Y, and Z. And if you know what those expectations are, you're clear on what the culture you're looking for, like what are those values that we share, it's much easier to reward and recognize that either verbally or through a written note or public recognition with the team. But most of that is proactive work. So it's not happening as much as like, oops, don't do that. That's firefighting and putting out fires, versus preventing and encouraging good behavior that you want to see more of. So that's one that's like really ingrained in creating culture. And I think just the clarity from the top down, like the common goal, like what's the bigger arching vision that we're going for? What are we excited about? That helps in recruitment, that helps in continuous buy-in. I mentioned that's something that team members see when you're doing in the group interview. But if you're not clear on like, what's that bigger thing that we don't have a to-do list of how we're going to do it, but we're all in for making that happen, it just gets you excited that like, beyond the challenges of today, we're still on the same page as far as where we want to be. And so we're going to get past this moment and we're going to get to that higher purpose. And so running it more with a heart and a passion versus like, we have to get these things checked off the list. Very different feeling when you come to work. If these things will get checked, and maybe they didn't all get checked today, but we're still on the path to this passion, and we're still acknowledging the passion part of it. And you can do that with any business. You don't have to be an abundance creator like we get to be an action coach. It can be law. It can be plumbing. Like, plumbing things aren't fun. Nobody wants backed up like toilet water in their house. So,
Right, exactly.
you're preventing some pretty nasty stuff in our world. So you can make it, it can come from the
We
heart
love
of
you,
what you're
plumbers
doing.
out
Yes.
there.
We all want our electricity 100% of the time. Like, there's things to get passionate about in any work that you do. But if you've lost that passion, your culture has probably lost a lot of that heart and spirit that's going to make a difference in getting everyone enrolled in that. So I would say, starting from some of those kind of just basic level, where is the passion coming from? What is your why? And then how do you get that into the tasks that you're doing and the reminders, and understanding how your team is a piece of that, and recruiting people that really are connected to where you're going, not just where you've been.
So a big BFO for me, and something you just shared, and BFO's the blinding flash of the obvious, and culture, kind of for me was always just this soft skills and warm and fuzzy things that you have in your company. But you've just mentioned something really critical, I think, when it comes to the KPIs or performance measurements for each team member, linking that to the reward and recognition, I think is a massive kind of takeaway. Yeah, so I think that, that's one part of it. And so that sort of helps the team members feel like they're achieving and winning.
Right.
But then you bring those soft elements into the culture with the fun and the passion and the why as well. So, yeah, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
So with your client, just let's come back to your client that's having a lot of success. What are some of the things that they've done? I mean, they're a trades business. So what are some of the things that they're doing around culture?
I think the big thing for them is, the owner realizing like their presence does mean a lot, and the presence of their management, and using this, specific feedback and acknowledgement. There was a great Harvard Business Review article that talked about a 70-year research project, but you don't see ones that long, about how do you build relationship. And it just revalidated that where happiness comes from for humans is our relationships, and how you best build relationships. So they kept backing it. Well, then how do you build relationships? They said it's the specific positive feedback. And we all think it. We think, oh, that was really nice. Or, oh, when you complimented me, like, I really appreciate that. But we don't always say it. We don't always specifically say, when you did X, Y, and Z, when you went the extra mile for that employee, when you volunteered to stay later and make sure that that was done correctly, when you went back and added those finishing touches for that customer, even though, it was good the first time and they're just wanting us to come back. Like, when you do these little things, it means a lot. And just acknowledging those things and being specific. A lot of times we just say things like good job, or you're great, or you're appreciated. So that get skill of becoming good at being specific with positive reinforcing comments. We already think it. It's just getting a better skill of really doing it. And that's something he's really worked on, is being more consistent with acknowledging those things, even in the trades where they're not, they're kind of used to kind of rough and tough and, in a dirty business of painting, like, it's just not something you would not get anywhere else. So it means a lot. It keeps people connected. They feel appreciated, and they're not going to easily be recruited somewhere else because they know they're valued here. They know they're needed here. They know that what they're contributing, even though it's just repainting, resurfacing a tub and tile or a countertop, like, the way they do it and how they approach it and their passion for the customer is appreciated and really valued. And I think that can come in just simple communication and getting managers to do that as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. Oh, so many BFOs. Thank you. And congratulations on the client success. And look forward to checking in and seeing how they're doing maybe in another 12 months. Yeah. Okay, so quick 3-fire questions for you, Juliet. Are you ready? Okay. What is your favorite business book?
Say that one again. I didn't get it.
That's okay. So tell me, Juliet, what's your favorite business book?
Favorite business book. Oh man, that's like one of my hardest. But I will go to one that has been well, actually, I'll just say like one of my go-tos that I repeat and repeat is Jim Rohn's like greatest hits. I have it on my Amazon, so I play it when I'm cooking, or I can listen to that over and over again. I get something new every time. But I've actually just been recently reading Brad's book, Raise Your Hand Marketing, with my team, and we're getting some great insights. So it just goes to show like we can relearn from the same content over and over again.
Love that. Yes, that is a great book. Okay, number 2, Juliet, who's been the best mentor or coach for you throughout your career?
I think, besides Jim Rohn, I would say Brad, actually. I've told him this too. Just meeting Brad Sugars in my life has really made a big impact, and watching how he presents has helped me become a better presenter. And every time on any kind of call with him, even if it's a group setting or a conference, I get my butt kicked, and I appreciate it. And it definitely helps me move forward. So I open the door for more of that. I'm always raising my hand for that.
Sorry, it keeps freezing. Okay, number 3, Juliet, what's the best piece of business advice that you have ever received?
Best piece of business advice. I think that, the underpinning message that I almost needed when I was younger that I got from different sources was just to give it a chance. So like one of my quotes is that quote from the hockey player about you miss all the shots that you don't take. And I think that underpinning I've gotten from a couple different sources, but it just keeps being reinforced of like, don't be so worried about it not being perfect or not scoring every time, but just keep taking shots, keep saying yes to things, even if you're uncomfortable, and really being comfortable being uncomfortable. I mean, I feel like that's kind of sums it up. Like, be in perturbation, be in uncomfortable land, keep pushing yourself, and amazing things happen every time I do that.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Juice, and great content in our interview today. Thanks for spending some time with us.
Yeah, absolutely. It was so fun.
See you soon.
Absolutely.
Michelle Adams, your host here. Hats off to you for committing to your learning by listening to this podcast. And if you'd like some help implementing some of these strategies, then click the link in the description to find your local action coach. They can help you put these strategies into action and take your business and your life to the next level. In the meantime, like and subscribe so that you're the first to get our next episode. We'll see you soon.